Another weekend of NFL football is in the books. We're going to talk about the biggest wins, the worst losses, and the biggest questions today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase.
Joe, happy Monday to you. Happy Victory Monday to those who are celebrating here in week 4. Happy Victory Tuesday in advance for 2 fan bases tomorrow. We had a lot of games. We had some wild finishes. We had some wild starts. I think some of the first half of these games were more crazy than the finishes.
Right. Honestly, yeah.
You had an electric game on Friday night in South Florida with Virginia Tech and Miami that had the Hail Mary called off, reversed after official review. We had the heavyweight 12-round fight between Alabama and Georgia this weekend. It was a great weekend, I should say. 3-day weekend of college of football all around.
Biggest win in the NFL, Kyle Crabbs. This is the Washington Commanders. 42-14 winners over the Arizona Cardinals. Commanders get to 3-1. Jayden Daniels continues to play really well. They don't punt. Now their defense woke up. Like, that was kind of the thing, is like the defense
right
in Washington's terrible. And they hold Arizona to 115 yards passing and beat them by 4 scores. Like, you got to feel great if you're
on the road, yeah.
Commanders fan. And, there's a lot that has to play out. But Jayden Daniels running the offense, making big throws, contributing as a runner, like, clearly the best rookie quarterback so far. And I don't know, man. Did you think the Commanders were going to win 5 or 6 games this year? They're already 3. They've already won 3. They're on pace for 12. They're doing well. It's a long season, but to me right now, the story is either Washington or Minnesota.
So I heard a stat on my way home this morning from drop-off on Sirius NFL radio. Washington hasn't scored 38 points or more in consecutive wins since 1991.
Wow.
I mean, that's how long it's been since there's been this level of, for any extended period. I mean, never mind like a season, just like any extended period of back-to-back games being able to score points. That's incredible. Yeah. And yeah, I think with Washington, do you remember we were kind of going through in August and you kind of had like this existential crisis with Washington? I remember we had it on the show where it's like, the roster doesn't grade particularly favorably, but they got a lot of young guys. Jayden Daniels, a big X factor for them. They got aggressive. If their vision for guys that they went out and got clicks, like you could see them making some noise.
Yeah.
But even I think that version of outcomes that we assessed with Washington when we looked at them, I don't think we ever imagined that they'd be looking like this. Jayden Daniels setting a record for completion percentage in the first 4 weeks to start I don't even think it's a rookie record. I think it's any quarterback in the NFL first 4 weeks, 80%. And I get like the structure of the offense is not prime Peyton Manning in Indianapolis.
Who cares?
It's apples to oranges in the first place with how the game's played these days. But also like it's good development to build confidence in a player, right? And it's working. It'd be one thing if it's not working. You'd sit here and you'd talk about the wide receiver room outside of Terry McLaurin and the issues you have with it and the training wheels on the offense being eliminated. None of that exists. And it's really fascinating to see teams try to figure out, like, how do we play quick game while respecting vertical ability with Jayden Daniels' ability to run the ball? And you don't really have an answer to that right now. And until teams do, I imagine they're going to continue to score a lot of points.
It's not a bad thing to say that a quarterback can come in and run the offense, man. Like some of these quarterbacks, if they could just come in and run the offense, that would be great for those football teams. And Washington is doing that, and they're still getting big plays. They're scoring points. Next up is the Browns. Then they got at Baltimore. You know, it gets tougher, but I mean, come on, they're 3-1.
They should. I think they should beat Cleveland.
They should.
We'll probably talk about Cleveland. That I don't think we're going to put them in the Raiders win in the best wins column.
Right.
But Minnesota, you mentioned Minnesota.
I mean,
4-0. Jumping up on top, 28-0 at one point, right? In the first half.
Yeah.
Green Bay makes it a game late. Minnesota doing just enough in the second half to kind of stave off a big time comeback, but the way that they jumped on top of Green Bay was really something. And obviously Jordan Love playing in his second game, sort of out of sync, felt like he hit his stride late in the game a little bit, but the turnovers were a killer. And that's what this defense for Minnesota thrives on. And I think this is probably the biggest win because we know what our big picture outlook was for Green Bay this season. And for Minnesota to have this hot start and then go in on the road and beat Green Bay, I think it's the biggest win of the weekend for me personally.
Yeah, Packers 0-2 now in the conference. Vikings, I mean, they got some quality wins. They got a tiebreaker over San Francisco. They've already taken the first one against Green Bay.
Yep.
I mean, they're positioned well. And
I get the Jets next weekend
in London. Yeah.
We better hope it doesn't rain, or else everybody's going to forget how to throw a forward pass there.
Boy.
You know, in the team in green. But
I mean, even Bo Nix couldn't think about anything other than getting his hands right.
I don't think Bo Nix has ever held a wet football in his life.
Oh, that was tough, man. It's tough to watch. They won the game 10-9, but geez.
Well, that for me is the biggest question game.
Yeah. So we'll keep celebrating the big wins here. What about the Bengals, man? I thought the Bengals beating Carolina 34-24 was an embodiment of something that I feel like I've talked about at every opportunity that I can about, like, not necessarily game script, but the idea of not getting the ball first, right? So if you get the ball first in a football game and you don't score, you are down a possession immediately, right?
Yep.
So Carolina gets the ball first. 12 plays, 69 yards. They're shut down at the 1 yard line, right? Disaster start. You're down a possession. Then, of course, the Bengals get the ball first coming out of half. And what do? They double dip. They get a touchdown to close out the first half. They get an opening drive touchdown to start the second half.
Middle eight.
Right. Like, so the middle eight combined with getting the ball first and not scoring, like, you make it really hard. You make it really hard. Like, you know, we talk about so many things about, like, the how of matchups and where they're good and all that stuff. But sometimes there's just, like, certain variables of a game that if you can manage those aspects, you're going to have a good chance. There's only so many possessions in a football game.
Right.
And I thought the Bengals were able to get the better of that in this one.
So, and this, I guess, kind of comes into deferring on coin tosses and having that decision and
100% defer.
Strategy. Yeah. And I know some fan bases get annoyed that their team always does that, but you're deferring until you have more information.
Yep.
And it allows you to have something in your back pocket with how you play the end of the first half.
Right. It's huge.
So it, as compared to just, we're going to take the ball and then we're going to let it ride, and is having an opportunity to go 12 plays, 69 yards in 6 minutes and turn the ball over on downs at the 1 yard line. Is that risk worth the reward of Cincinnati getting the ball back with 1:09 left and going 8 plays, 66 yards to break a tie game, and then get the ball out of half and put together an 8 plays, 71-yard touchdown drive that now all of a sudden you blink, and in 6 minutes of game clock, you went from a tie game to down 2 touchdowns.
There are more big wins. There's plenty of bad losses. There's plenty of questions. We got a lot to talk about here today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. Be sure to stick with us. Folks, you want to get to these games. I'm sure you want to take in your favorite team at the stadium. Well, if you do, you got to check out Gametime. Gametime is the fast and easy way to purchase tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. I love the app. It's easy to navigate. They give you a seat view. They give you flash deals. They give you an all-in price, so you can choose to turn on the all-in prices and see exactly what the full price is going to be from the beginning of the purchase. And I also love this. They specialize in last-minute tickets, so you don't have to decide today if you can get to a concert or an event down the road. You can make that choice later on when you when you have more information, right? When you have more information to see if you are going to be able to attend, and they have great deals on last-minute tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time.
As far as putting a bow on best wins, I do think the way in which Baltimore won is a storyline last night, where you and I picked the game and we picked the hot hand in Buffalo.
Yeah.
But when we introduced that game, we said Buffalo's down their starting linebackers and their nickel, and Baltimore wants to be all out running the ball, and they got Derrick Henry. In theory, you should be able to do this, and that's the trend across the league. And that's obviously they hit an explosive run right out the gate and helped set the tone of the game. But it was the fact that there was this low-hanging fruit of where Buffalo is unfortunately banged up right now, and they took advantage of that early to then set the tone for the game. But for them to start the year 0-2 and drop a bad loss to the Raiders to then come back and get the wins the last 2 weeks, I think is one of the other wins that's a really significant win in this snapshot for week 4.
Yeah, I agree. I think Baltimore deserves a big-time shout-out. I was going to bring it up in biggest questions because I thought there was a lot from the Buffalo side, but let's get into it now. For the Bills in this game, I mean, obviously the Ravens, they have Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. They're going to run the football, right? And we said obviously that the Bills don't match up well with Baltimore, partly because of the personnel, but partly because of the defensive structure and how the Bills choose to play defense. They're going to live in nickel and dime, and they're going to give you light boxes. Kyle Crabbs in a game where Baltimore led by 2 scores for 75% of the game. The Bills gave Baltimore 6 or fewer defenders in the box on 41.2% of rushing snaps.
Yeah.
They gave them heavy boxes on 8% of rushing snaps. They had 5.5 yards before contact per rush, 2.5 yards after contact. It's like, you can't, like, at some point you need to go in this game. Lamar on throws 20 yards or more down the field entering this game was 1 of 8 for 38 yards. You needed to go into this game and say, Lamar Jackson, if you can beat us throwing the ball down the field, we'll live with it. That's fine. What you can't live with is giving up 271 rushing yards and 8 yards a pop. You can't, you needed to load the box and dare them to win in a different way. And you got gashed from literally the first snap.
Do you feel like some of that with Baltimore, though, is because of what Lamar can do with his legs and how it changes how you space and try to leverage the box in the run game?
Sure, but I rather live with giving myself a chance with box counts and living with that variance as opposed to, man, you can't even get lined up. They're playing with heavy personnel. They're unbalanced lines. You're not bumping the backers. You're not doing anything.
You did that to us in week 2. I feel
well, they knew to bump them. They knew right, but the game script, right? The game script mattered. The rushing yards were there against Miami. The rushing yards have been there for any team that wants them against the Bills. It's about the game script, and so that's why I picked Buffalo. I thought, well, the Ravens have the worst pass defense in the league entering this game. The Bills will be able to score and keep pressure on Baltimore, and you'd have a more neutral game. Well, the game script gets out of hand, and all of a sudden, Baltimore gets whatever they want. But the fact that throughout the entire game, you wind up giving them heavy boxes on 8% of runs when they're heavy personnel left and right, like, you got to ask yourself some questions, especially if you want to fit the run like that without Taron Johnson. I mean, I know Baltimore's 1 of 1, right? They're 1 of 1. They got 2 unicorns in the backfield with how they can run the ball. But, this is going to be a challenge for the Bills all year if they're not going to structurally choose to do anything different.
I think what is fascinating, though, is it's like this is the embodiment of what we have heard the mentality is in the NFL right now from defensive coaches, right? And we want to limit explosive plays in the passing game. We are willing to. Cody Alexander from Match Quarters had a quote on a podcast that he had from a defensive coach that said, If you're going to run the ball for five yards per carry, that's fine. We're going to play another down.
All right.
What is it? This is that, right? And it's like, this is what can happen if a team has the personnel to really make you pay for it and stays committed to making you pay for it.
Right.
Derrick Henry with 200 yards of offense. 21 point,
only
20
two
miles
Kyle,
per hour.
only 2.5 yards after contact. Just
right.
Space.
Right.
What? So big point being, great win for Baltimore. Great win for Baltimore, getting out of the 0-2 hole, and now they're sitting at a home date or a road date against Cincinnati, and they get Washington. But yeah, I mean, 0-2 into, you kind of give it up against Dallas, and then you double down with back-to-back 270-yard rushing performances. I mean, talk about the team you're built to be.
Right.
You got a chance to be it the last 2 weeks.
I don't think there's any such thing as a bad win in the NFL, but as we get ready to transition to worse losses, I guess you could look at the Chiefs and their 17-10 win against the Chargers and the loss of Rashee Rice through the lens of a worse loss. That the reports as of last night didn't sound promising. I don't think we have any updates as of this point, but on a turnover, Patrick Mahomes ends up inadvertently taking out Rashee Rice's leg. They're worried about an ACL. Chiefs really weren't in a position to have this guy go down. They're already down Pacheco for an extended period of time. Hollywood Brown. If you lose Rashee Rice for potentially the entirety of the season, we're about to find out just how much juice Travis Kelce has left in his legs. And Xavier Worthy's going to have to step in a big way.
Yeah, I mean, all that to say they're 4-0. There are 4 tight wins that could have went either way. But as the Chiefs continue to stumble through wins, it's like, what about that team though is like, is it too much? You know, I don't know what that point is, but like, I think fortunately for them, it's happening earlier in the season. They're 4-0, and I mean, I'm sure that they will be able to acquire some level of receiving talent. Now, for them, hopefully it's not Kadarius Toney, right? They need, but I mean, there's going to be players that are going to become available. Wide receivers get traded. I think they're probably going to be fine. But yeah, it's getting harder. It's getting harder. A lot of the identity of what that team wants to be is injured, and that's hard. So yeah, I think that's a good call out.
I'll give some grace to Philadelphia in spite of how ugly that loss was to Tampa Bay. We'll get them out of the way, knowing you're playing without Devonta Smith and AJ Brown and Lane Johnson. It's a heck of a trio to not play a football game with. I don't know that I necessarily expected you to have pretty much 0 yards in the first half. Tampa jumped up on top of this team a lot to a little. Philly kind of made it close, and then Tampa put it away after it became a 2-score game in the second half. But impressive win for Tampa Bay. But I think as you look at the context of the game for Philly's perspective, give them a little bit of grace just because of how banged up they are right
now. I mean, do we need to talk about the Jaguars? They're 0-4.
Yeah, we do need to talk about the Jaguars. Brother, Doug's just buying his time, right?
Boy, I mean, just embarrassing.
So Jacksonville's up in this game, and they go 9 plays, 87 yards in this was the drive that ended the third quarter and went into the fourth quarter.
Yep. And
they turn it over on downs, right?
Take the points, go up a touchdown.
Right. Doug's done this. Some of the fourth quarter decision making, I think it's a great embodiment of like having a pulse of the game. Like he did it in week 1. They went for it on their own 28-yard line on 4th down and didn't get it. And they had led the entire game.
And literally
the entire game.
Right. Literally.
And then it was a tie game. I believe it was either tie or they were still at 3 points, but they went for it and didn't get it. And it's changed the entire tone of the end of the game. And they did it again. And, you credit Houston for pulling out the drive late to actually go ahead and score the touchdown. because that was a nice situational drive, right? I mean, there was less than 3 minutes left on the clock when they took over down 3 points. They go down and get a touchdown with the football game. But from Jacksonville's perspective, Doug's getting hostile with the media now. He's kind of passively throwing players under the bus. Say, Press Taylor called a good game, but the players got to go out and make plays.
Boy.
Like all this stuff afterwards, it's like, man, like if you're here now, it's just it feels like it's just a matter of time for Jacksonville.
Solid game for Gabe Davis. 1 catch for -2 yards on 5 targets.
Oh, come on now, don't do that. And Trevor missed a couple throws in this game too.
Oh,
yeah, a couple wide open touchdowns that he missed as well.
Missing throws all year.
Oh, okay. So here's a question for you: Which of the quarterback contract extensions that got done this offseason should their team feel the best about right now?
Are any of them good? Like Goff's kind of not been that good. Tua, not a great situation there.
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence, that looks bad. Who else is on the list?
Jordan Love, who's 0-2 and turned the ball over a bunch, but there's context there, so you get it. But dealt with an MCL sprain already. It's just like those guys. Oh, you signed a contract? Congrats. Here's 1 month of hell for you as penance at minimum.
Right.
Yeah.
No good deed ever goes unpunished, Kyle Crabbs. Right. All right, biggest questions. We'll talk about that here on the other side of it. Be sure to stick with us. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook.
Some games we didn't get to. What's your biggest question left unaddressed at this point?
Anthony Richardson's a big question for me. Goes down. He's big physical quarterback, hip injury, putting him back in there, gets hurt.
But they call a quarterback run on the first play comes back in.
I mean, come on, man. What are we doing? And not that Anthony Richardson's played well this year, but he keeps getting hurt, just all the time. All the time he's getting hurt. And so that's a big question for me. The Colts win the game. I think their offense probably run better with Joe Flacco, respectfully. But I mean, this is a top 5 pick, a quarterback in the second season. I don't like how that's heading. I don't like how that's trending at all.
So, okay, here's a question for you. You look at quarterbacks from that draft class: Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson.
Yep.
Who is more likely to be the day 1 starter in 2025? It's impossible to answer the question, but I think the fact that we have that level of uncertainty about Anthony when Bryce has been benched already, just because there's been some reports that maybe we're not going to be out on Bryce Young long term and he needs a timeout and a reset.
I literally don't have anything to say. They're both very complicated situations where neither one feels very optimistic right now.
I guess the silver lining is when Indy took Anthony Richardson, you knew it was going to be a process and he still hasn't played.
Right.
Is that enough to, I think if he can avoid a significant injury this season and he can actually get some reps, you could say, okay, this is kind of the rookie season for him. We'll build off of that. And I know there was some discussion about how far along he was or wasn't. And that was one of the big dividing points with him as a talking point is he didn't have the reps, but was he raw or was he actually raw or just inexperienced? But I thought he was raw. And I think you're seeing a player who's raw just off the areas that he still has to grow as a second-year player. But you got to be on the field. And the fact that he's taken another injury and missed the end of the game is concerning.
I feel like you had something you want to say about Cleveland.
How far does the bottom drop out here for the Browns? This was a team that won 12 games last year. They won 12-5, right? And I know you're maybe going to get some reinforcements with Nick Chubb. Sounds like they're going to open his practice window, but this team is now 1-3. So you're more than halfway to the amount of losses that you had last year. You're getting Deshaun Watson out there, and for a Cleveland fan perspective, it's a bit of a bummer because he stepped up in the pocket and got speared by Christian Wilkins on a play and hit an explosive touchdown that was 78 yards, and it got called back on a ticky-tack hold. And then you're in a position for them to go down and score and win the game, and Watson misses a front side progression on fourth down and takes a sack on 4th and game.
Yeah, I think for me with quarterbacks in those moments, I feel like I learned so much about them. Like in situations where you can't take a sack, situations where you have to at least throw the ball and give your team a chance. Like what you do in those moments, I tend to find myself with irreconcilable differences with quarterbacks that either eat the ball, don't throw it like with a game on the line type situation. And I mean, it's egregious, man. That's egregious. You didn't give your team a chance. So, like, I hear you. Players getting healthy. Your defense has a lot of potency. Does it matter as long as Flores the quarterback?
Well, that's my question. Is this is a team that is now 31st in yards and 26th in scoring offense through the first 4 weeks.
Not exactly playing world beater defenses in the Cowboys, Jaguars, Giants, and Raiders.
They got at Washington, at Philadelphia, and then home against Cincinnati, home against Baltimore the next 4 games. It's like how far does the bottom drop on this team?
Boy.
And then their last 4 games is Kansas City, at Cincinnati, Miami. What's their quarterback situation look like in Week 17, and at Baltimore? I'll tell you this. I did a playoff predictors for the mock draft. I know it's stunning breaking news here on the show. But every time I do a mock draft for 33rd team, I do a playoff predictors to finish out the order based on the current records. I Cleveland top 6 pick. Like I think that's where this season is headed for them. I don't see layups.
No, everything's going to be hard for them, Kyle. Everything's going to be hard.
Yeah.
This game against Philly in Week 6 is the game we all deserve. Put that thing on Thursday night. Flex it to Thursday night right now.
Dang, dude,
that's a game.
That's a bummer. Wait. The Dolphins are on a bye that week? I might go.
Wow, you want to watch some bad ball?
I might go.
Might be good therapy. Be in the stands for that one, right?
Right. What other games did we get to? San Francisco, New England? Your question
went about how you thought it would, right?
Right. I don't have a lot of questions there other than how healthy can San Francisco get and how long can the Patriots be patient with Drake May?
We didn't spend much time on Broncos Jets other than acknowledging that it was raining, and Bo Nix was 12 of 25 for 6 yards and won the game.
-7 passing yards at halftime. Just wait.
Wow.
The defense is great. Just wait until we get Aaron Rodgers. Just wait till we get a quarterback. Well,
hey, he was really good on Thursday night against the Patriots, Kyle.
Right.
I mean, come on.
What a difference 10 days make. We went from the greatest team in the history of the sport to losing at home to the Broncos, missing a field goal. I'll give Aaron credit for this. His post game, he was asked about the false starts, and they had 13 penalties in the game. 5 of them were false starts on working the hard count. Robert Saleh said in his post game presser that they might need to cut it back, and Aaron Rodgers says, or we just do it right.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's been a hallmark of Aaron's game forever.
Hold the players accountable. It's the same thing as Baker doing an interview and saying they brought me in to have fun again because players weren't having fun with Tom Brady. I'm sorry. Did I miss the time where the Bucs won the Super Bowl and Tom Brady was there 3 years?
I hoped I missed it, but I remember living through that.
Right. So like at some point, if you got to change what you're doing to get to where you want to go, like it's probably not going to be fun for part of that experience. And I think about that. I'm totally on Aaron's side about the hard count. If that's how you want to operate, it should not be a disqualifying ask for guys to stay on side and not move early before the snap based on what the snap count is.
No, Laramie Tunsil, the one exception. That guy
is
for
basic function of lining up to play a snap.
Can we shout out Denver's defense, though? I mean, come on now. They've been terrific.
Crazy good. And Nick Benito was good, too.
3 weeks in a row, they've held their opponent under 250 yards. They've allowed 29 points in the last 3 games. Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay, and the Jets. Next 2 are the Raiders and Chargers. You feel pretty decent, right? Like, all right, let's not beat ourselves on offense. Let's lean on this defense and see if we can run the little ball a little bit, sprinkle in some Bo Nix, and see if we can win some football games.
Did we do it again? Did the biggest underdog of the week win outright again?
It had to be New England, right? Well, we can look at the sheet. You have the sheet.
Yeah, this let's see. New England 10.5.
I'm sure nothing was worse than that.
Jets were favored by 7.5. So that was the second biggest spread of the weekend.
Yeah, leave it to the Patriots to not handle their business and do all that stuff that they're supposed to.
I don't hold the Patriots. I don't hold any ill will towards their performance because I think that's what this team really is. You got Jacoby Brissett out here taking all the hits for Drake.
He's the meat shield, man. That's what we knew he was going to be. The meat shield.
He is. Any Falcons Saints of the game? I don't think we touched on this game at all. Try to get them all. 58-yarder from Young Hoiku at the buzzer.
That's good, huh? So pure. Like, he kicks the ball a little bit different, but like the ball flight is always so good. I think he's going to make every kick every time I watch him play. And he's hitting 50-yarders seemingly every time I watch Falcons.
All right. So my biggest question out of this game is when is Bijan Robinson going to start playing like the player that we know that Bijan Robinson's capable of being?
I don't have an easy answer for that. Because, obviously Algier was just more effective running the ball in this game,
right,
which is not the world it's supposed to be.
But we also kind of felt Bijan Robinson was this transcendent. He's averaging 4.1 yards per carry, 55 touches through 4 weeks. I'm not criticizing the coaching staff at all. It's just that's the biggest question.
Raheem Morris is going to tell you stats are for losers. I heard him talk all about it yesterday.
And that's fine. But I never in a million years would have guessed this would have been the production profile for Bijan Robinson with how good he was at Texas.
Yeah, I think there's probably some analytics to look into there. He's going to be fine. He's a very talented player. I wonder, like, what are the box counts that he's getting compared to Algier, which, we can actually look that up. Of course, you and I are nothing better than us figuring things out on the fly here. So, wow, neither one of them got a stacked box one time. That's crazy. Well, so that doesn't really work out. 0% stacked boxes the entire game.
It might have to be a deep dive.
Might have to be a deep dive, yeah.
And then the other game I realized we did not touch on was Chicago at home, moving to 2-2 with a win over the Rams.
What are you doing, Matt Stafford? What was that pick at the end, bro?
Yeah, I think that's the bummer. In spite of how banged up this team is for the Rams, with the offensive line, the wide receivers, they still had it, right?
Yeah, game-breaking run by DeAndre Swift. Mistakes from the Rams. Bears win at home. They're 2-2. Like, good for them. I think that's a good spot for them to be, obviously.
Oh, I'm watching the replay of this interception now.
The Bears next is Carolina, Jacksonville. Might be 4-2.
Chicago?
Yeah, that's their next 2. Home games. Home. All these games home. And they go to Arizona, 2 Washington, 2 Arizona, host the Patriots.
The good news Bears. That's at least 4 wins in that stretch, right?
It never goes like that, Kyle. Never goes like that.
Yeah, that's rookie quarterbacks. A ton of. So that's perhaps the next question for the Bears. Is the biggest question for the Bears is, can you do the thing you're supposed to do now and win these winnable games? A lot of them at home. We shall see. That's going to do it for us here on Locked On NFL Scouting. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He is Joe Marino. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you list your favorite podcast. Make it a great rest of your day. We are out of here.